The briefing room at RAF Waddington fell silent as the curtain pulled back, revealing the map. Flight Lieutenant James Hartley felt his stomach drop. Berlin. Again. But this time, the Red Line didn't follow the usual bombing routes. It curved south, deep into enemy territory, then made an impossible turn, straight toward the Swiss border. "Gentlemen," Group Captain Morrison's voice cut through the cigarette smoke, "what you're about to hear does not leave this room." 28 young men sat rigid in their seats. Outside, the Lincolnshire fog pressed against the windows like a living thing, swallowing the dark shapes of Lancasters parked on the hardstands. It was October 1943. The war had been grinding on for 4 brutal years, and everyone in that room knew the odds. 30 operations to complete a tour, and most crews never made it past 15. Hartley was on his 23rd. "Operation Rubicon," Morrison continued, his face carved from stone. 1 aircraft, 1 crew, 1 mission. He paused, letting the weight settle. "Intelligence has intercepted communications suggesting the Germans are weeks away from operational deployment of a new weapons system. Something that could make the Luftwaffe unstoppable." The projector clicked. A grainy photograph appeared. German text, technical drawings, mathematical equations that meant nothing to most of the men in the room but everything to the war effort. 3 days ago, one of our agents in Berlin photographed documents from a facility near Peenemünde. He was compromised before he could transmit. He's now in a safe house outside Dresden, critically wounded, with the only physical copies of these documents. MI6 believes they detail the full specifications and production timeline for Germany's jet fighter program, and possibly something worse. Someone coughed. Another man's boot scraped against the floor. The only other sound was the rain beginning to hammer against the roof. "You will fly to coordinates that will be provided 1 hour before takeoff. You will land in a meadow. You will retrieve the agent and the documents. You will return." Morrison's eyes swept across the room. "If you're shot down over Germany with those documents, the enemy will know we know. They'll accelerate production, change locations, upgrade security. We'll lose our only window to stop this." Hartley's navigator, Flight Sergeant Peter Collins, leaned close. "That's a suicide run, sir." Morrison heard him anyway. "Yes, Sergeant. It very likely is." The group captain's gaze locked onto Hartley. "Lieutenant, you and your crew have the highest survival rate in the squadron. You've brought Sugar home from Hamburg, from the Ruhr, from Berlin twice. You know how to fly when there's no business flying." He stepped closer. "I need that skill tonight." Hartley felt every eye in the room turn toward him. His crew, Collins on navigation, Flight Sergeant Tommy Webb on wireless, Sergeant Bill Morrison on rear turret, Sergeant Jack Palmer in the mid-upper turret, Sergeant Dave Richardson as bomb aimer, and Sergeant Robert Fitzgerald as flight engineer. 7 men who trusted him with their lives every time they climbed into Sugar. "When do we leave?" Hartley heard himself say. 2,300 hours. "You'll fly blacked out, low altitude once you cross the enemy coast. No bombs. You need the weight for fuel and the return passenger. The documents will be in a waterproof case. Guard them with your life." Morrison's voice dropped. "Because tens of thousands of other lives depend on it." By 2,100 hours, the crew stood beneath Sugar's dark silhouette. The Lancaster bomber loomed above them, a 4-engine giant with a wingspan that seemed to stretch into the fog itself. Ground crew swarmed around her, checking fuel lines, ammunition belts, oxygen systems. Everything had to be perfect. There would be no second chances. "Skipper," Fitz approached, his Irish accent thick with concern, "they've stripped out half our defensive guns to save weight. If we get jumped—" "We don't get jumped," Hartley cut him off, but not harshly. "We fly low. We stay quiet. We get in and get out before Jerry even knows we're there. And if they do know?" This from Morrison in the rear turret, always the pessimist, always the realist. Hartley met his eyes. Then we fly faster. The joke fell flat. Everyone knew a Lancaster, heavy with fuel and flying at near-stall speed close to the ground, wasn't fast at all. She was a sitting duck. Collins emerged from the navigation station with a sealed envelope. Coordinates just came through, encrypted. We won't know exactly where we're going until we're airborne. He looked pale. 20 minutes on the ground, they said. Any longer and German mobile units will triangulate our position. 20 minutes. To land a 30-ton bomber in a field they'd never seen, in enemy territory, at night, with no lights. To locate an injured agent. To secure documents that could change the course of the war. To take off again before Wehrmacht troops arrived. Check your watches, Hartley ordered. We go wheels up in 40 minutes. Webb, the wireless operator, was already climbing aboard, his radio equipment configured for absolute silence. No transmissions unless absolutely critical. They would be ghosts in the night sky. Richardson, the bomb aimer, stared at the empty bomb bay. Usually packed with thousands of pounds of high explosives, tonight it held only extra fuel tanks and a makeshift medical station. Blankets, morphine, bandages. For the agent they were risking everything to retrieve. Load up, Hartley commanded. One by one, his crew climbed through the small door into S. Sugar's belly. Hartley went last, pausing at the threshold. Somewhere to the east, beyond the fog and the darkness and hundreds of miles of hostile territory, a wounded man waited with secrets that could end the war. Or, if captured, prolong it by years. The group captain's words echoed in his mind. Guard them with your life. Hartley pulled himself inside and sealed the door behind him. At 2,255 hours, S. Sugar's 4 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines coughed to life, their thunder rolling across the airfield. In the cockpit, Hartley ran through final checks while Fitz called out readings. Oil pressure. Fuel. Hydraulics. Everything green. Control, this is Sugar. Ready for departure. Sugar, you are cleared. Godspeed. The Lancaster rolled forward, her tail wheel lifting as she picked up speed. The runway lights were dimmed to almost nothing. Blackout conditions, even here. Hartley pulled back on the yoke, feeling the massive bomber fight gravity, then surrender to it. The wheels left the ground. They were airborne. Course heading? Hartley asked. Collins tore open the sealed envelope, his penlight illuminating the coordinates. His face went white. Jesus Christ. Collins. Skipper, we're not just going to Germany. The navigator's voice shook. We're going to the Czech border. Near the mountains. That's Luftwaffe training ground. That's where their best squadrons operate. In the rear turret, Morrison keyed his intercom. Bloody hell. Palmer, in the mid-upper turret, scanned the darkness. At least tell me we're going in high, fast, and low, Hartley interrupted. Treetop level once we cross the coast. Below radar. Below visual range. We're a shadow tonight, boys. The English Channel passed beneath them, invisible in the darkness. They were committed now. No turning back. Ahead, somewhere in the night, lay Germany. And beyond that, a secret that could end the war. Or end them. The coast of Holland materialized through the darkness like a jagged wound, searchlights sweeping the sky, tracer fire arcing upward from flak positions, the distant glow of burning cities reflecting off the clouds. Hartley pushed the yoke forward, dropping S. Sugar to 800 feet, then 600, then 400. The altimeter spun backward as the Lancaster descended into the valley of shadows between Earth and radar coverage. Jesus, Skipper, any lower and we'll be mowing grass, Fitz muttered, his hands white-knuckled on the engineer's panel. The Merlin engines roared at near maximum power, their sound thundering back from the invisible ground below. But down here, beneath the radar net, they were invisible to German controllers. At least that was the theory. The practice was 70 tons of aluminum and steel screaming across occupied Europe at 180 miles per hour with maybe 300 feet of clearance. "Ground features ahead," Richardson called from the bomb aimer's position in the nose, his face pressed against the clear perspex. "Church spire, 9 o'clock, 1 mile." Hartley banked hard left. The Lancaster tilted, her wingtips slicing through the darkness barely 50 feet from the medieval tower. In the rear turret, Morrison watched it flash past, close enough to see individual stones. "Navigator, time to German border?" Collins worked his calculations by penlight, maps spread across his small desk. 17 minutes at current speed and heading. Then another 43 minutes to the landing zone. He paused. "Skipper, the route takes us directly over Osnabrück. That's a major rail hub. Jerry's going to have flak batteries thick as trees. Then we go around. Going around adds 12 minutes. We hit the landing zone in full daylight." Hartley's jaw tightened. 12 minutes. The difference between darkness and exposure. Between success and suicide. "We go through. Webb, any wireless traffic?" The radio operator pressed his headphones tighter. "German controllers are quiet tonight. Too quiet. Either they don't know we're here or—" The night exploded. Searchlights erupted from the ground, 6 brilliant columns of white light stabbing upward, sweeping the darkness. Sugar was still below their angle, but not for long. Somewhere a flak battery commander had heard engines. Somewhere an operator was cranking elevation wheels, bringing 88mm guns to bear. Evasive. Hartley threw the Lancaster into a violent bank right, then left, then dove another 50 feet. The 4-engine bomber screamed through the darkness like a wounded whale, her airframe groaning under the G-forces. Whump, whump, whump. Flak burst above them, orange flowers blooming against the black sky. Shrapnel rang off Sugar's wings, her fuselage, her tail. In the rear turret, Morrison curled up as hot metal tore through the air inches from his head. "We're hit!" Palmer shouted from mid-upper. "Starboard wing, minor damage, no fire." "Keep moving." Hartley hauled the yoke left, right, diving, climbing, never steady, never predictable. The searchlights chased them, sweeping frantically, but Sugar was too low, too fast, dancing between the beams like a boxer dodging punches. Then they were past. The flak fell behind. The searchlights faded. Darkness swallowed them again. "Damage report," Hartley commanded, his voice steady despite his hammering heart. Fitz ran through his instruments. "All engines nominal. Fuel tanks intact. Hydraulics green. Some skin damage starboard wing, nothing critical." He exhaled slowly. "We got lucky." "Lucky," Webb repeated, almost laughing. "We just flew through a flak storm at 300 feet and you call that lucky?" "You're alive, aren't you?" The border crossing happened in silence. No markers, no signs, just Collins calling it out, "German airspace. We are now over the enemy." They flew deeper into the darkness, following the contours of the land. Over forests, around hills, threading between towns that showed not a single light. Total blackout below. Total silence on the radio. As if the entire country was holding its breath. "Time to target?" Hartley asked. 31 minutes, Collins replied. "But skipper, I'm seeing something on the map. The landing zone, it's in a valley between 2 mountain ridges. Steep approaches. If we come in wrong." "We don't come in wrong." "And take off?" "We'll be loaded with extra weight in a short field, uphill." "One problem at a time, Collins." The navigator fell silent, but everyone on the crew knew what he was thinking. Landing was one thing. Taking off again, with German mobile units converging, with dawn approaching, with a wounded man aboard, That was something else entirely. Richardson's voice crackled over the intercom. "Skipper, I've been thinking about these documents. If they're so important, why not just transmit the information? Why risk a Lancaster and 7 men?" "Because," Hartley replied, "photographs can be confirmed. Radio transmissions can be intercepted, decoded, fabricated. But the actual documents, in German handwriting, on official paper, with seals and signatures, that's proof. That's evidence even the skeptics can't deny." "And if we go down? Then we burn them before capture. Webb, you've got the matches." "Yes, sir." The wireless operator's voice was grim. "And the thermite grenades. The documents won't survive either way." Palmer called out from his turret. "Aircraft, 9 o'clock high, 3 miles. No, wait, it's turning away. Friendly, maybe." Maybe wasn't good enough. Hartley eased more power from the engines, squeezing every knot of speed from the heavy bomber. The Lancaster shuddered, protesting, but she gave him what he asked for. The terrain below grew rougher. Hills became mountains. Forests became thick darkness. Collins gave constant heading corrections, guiding them through valleys, around peaks, toward the coordinates that would change everything. 10 minutes, the navigator announced. Hartley's hands were steady on the controls, but his mind raced. Landing in an unknown field. At night. In enemy territory. With no ground support, no backup, no rescue if things went wrong. This was beyond any training, beyond any manual. This was flying by instinct and prayer. 5 minutes. Descending to final approach altitude. The mountains rose around them, black shadows against a slightly less black sky. Sugar threaded the needle between peaks, her wingtips clearing rock faces by margins that made even Hartley's stomach turn. "I have the field," Richardson called. 12 o'clock, 2 miles. "Jesus, skipper, it's tiny." "How tiny?" "Maybe 400 yards. Upslope. Trees on 3 sides." Fitz checked his calculations. "We need at least 500 yards for a clean landing, more for takeoff. We make do with what we have." 3 miles, Collins counted down. 2 miles. 1 mile. A light flashed below. 3 short pulses. Pause. 3 more pulses. "That's the signal," Webb confirmed. "He's down there." Hartley lined up on the field, such as it was, a dark rectangle in darker forest, maybe 50 yards wide, climbing toward the mountains. This was going to be tight. This was going to be impossible. Landing gear down. The wheels dropped into the slipstream with a solid thunk. Flaps down, 20 degrees. Speed back to 110 knots. The Lancaster wallowed in the air, heavy and ungainly, a war machine designed for bombing runs, not covert insertions. 100 feet, Richardson called. 50 feet. Trees ahead. Hartley cut power. Sugar dropped like a stone. The wheels hit grass hard, bounced once, slammed down again. Hartley stood on the brakes, all 4 engines screaming in reverse thrust. The Lancaster hurtled up the slope, eating up precious yards, the tree line rushing toward them at terrifying speed. The bomber shuddered to a stop. 20 feet from the trees. Maybe less. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. "Down safe," Hartley finally said. "We have 20 minutes. Richardson, Webb, with me. The rest of you stay on engines and guns. Anything moves out there that isn't us, you kill it." He threw open the door and dropped into the German night. The meadow was silent except for the ticking of hot engines and the whisper of wind through grass. Hartley's eyes adjusted slowly to the darkness. There, a shadow near the tree line, moving. "Royal Air Force," Hartley called softly. "Operation Rubicon." The shadow became a man. Old, weathered, speaking English with a thick Czech accent. "Thank God. I thought you would not come. He is here, badly wounded. Germans came to the safe house. He barely escaped." They followed him to a makeshift shelter, branches and canvas. Inside, a man lay on a stretcher, his breathing shallow, his chest wrapped in blood-soaked bandages. Early 30s, maybe. British features. Intelligence officer, by his bearing. His eyes opened. "The documents," he whispered. "Inside my jacket. Left pocket." Richardson retrieved a waterproof case, no bigger than a book. Inside, through the plastic, they could see papers covered in German text and technical drawings. "This is it?" Webb asked. "This is what we risked everything for?" The wounded agent coughed, blood flecking his lips. "That's the complete specifications for the Messerschmitt Me 262. Jet engines. 540 miles per hour. Plus schematics for their production facility. Every detail." His hand gripped Hartley's jacket. "They're 6 weeks from operational deployment. 6 weeks. If they get these jets into combat before we're ready," he coughed again, "thousands will die." Hartley nodded grimly. "Let's get you aboard." They carried him carefully, the Czech partisan helping. The agent weighed almost nothing. Blood loss, starvation, torture maybe. But he was alive. And he had the documents. "Skipper." Palmer's voice from the turret, urgent. "Vehicles approaching from the east. 2 miles, maybe 3. I can see their headlights." "Load him." Hartley sprinted back to the cockpit. "Collins, plot me a takeoff heading. Fitz, maximum power on all engines." The Merlins roared back to full power. Sugar shook like a living thing, straining against the brakes. Outside, Richardson and Webb were sealing the door, the agent secured in the makeshift medical station. "They're in," Webb called. "Go, go, go." Hartley released the brakes. The Lancaster lunged forward, accelerating up the slope, the tree line rushing toward them with horrifying speed. Behind them, headlights appeared at the far end of the meadow. German voices shouted. Then gunfire, small arms, crackling in the darkness. "We're too heavy," Fitz yelled. "We're not going to make it." The trees loomed ahead. 50 yards. 40. 30. Hartley pulled back on the yoke with all his strength. Sugar's wheels left the ground with maybe 10 feet to spare. The Lancaster clawed for altitude, her belly scraping through the uppermost branches, leaves and twigs exploding against her fuselage. Hartley felt the controls shudder. Too slow, too heavy, too close to a stall. Behind them, tracer rounds lit up the night, stitching patterns through the darkness where they'd been seconds before. "Gear up! Flaps up!" Hartley barked. Every ounce of drag mattered now. The wheels retracted with agonizing slowness. The Lancaster groaned, fighting for every foot of altitude. The mountain ridge ahead rose higher, a black wall that blotted out the stars. They weren't going to clear it. Not like this. Full emergency power. Hartley shoved the throttles past their safety stops. The Merlin engines screamed in protest, their RPMs climbing into the red. The airframe vibrated so violently that instruments became unreadable. "We're tearing her apart," Fitz shouted over the roar. "Better torn apart than dead." The ridge rushed toward them. Sugar climbed at an impossible angle, nose high, tail low, on the ragged edge of a stall. Richardson, in the bomb aimer's position, stared through the nose perspex at rocks so close he could see individual cracks in the stone. "Pull up! Pull up! Pull!" They cleared the ridge by inches. The Lancaster's tail wheel actually clipped the peak, sending a shower of sparks into the darkness. Then they were over, dropping into the valley beyond, Hartley pushing the nose down to build speed, to get away from the edge of disaster. Altitude 600 feet, Collins called, his voice shaking. Heading 095. But skipper, we've got a problem. Just one. We're on the wrong side of the mountains. To get home, we have to climb over them or go through the pass. Either way. An explosion of static erupted from Webb's radio. Then a voice, clear and cold, speaking German. Achtung! Unidentified aircraft, Valley Sector 7. All units engage. They've scrambled fighters, Webb translated unnecessarily. At least 2, maybe more. Coming from the north. Morrison in the rear turret swiveled his guns. I've got nothing yet. But if they're Bf-109s, we're done. We can't outrun them, we can't outfight them with half our guns stripped. Then we do what Lancasters do best, Hartley interrupted. We take the punishment and keep flying. He threw the bomber into a hard turn, following the valley floor, hugging the terrain. Mountains rose on both sides, black and towering. Ahead, Collins found the pass, a narrow cut through the rock, maybe 300 yards wide, with a river running through it. That's our way out, the navigator said. But skipper, it's barely wide enough. One wing clip and... We fit. And if there's a crosswind... We fit. Palmer's voice cracked over the intercom. Contacts. High 6 o'clock, diving. 2 aircraft, closing fast. Hartley didn't hesitate. He dove S-sugar into the pass, the Lancaster's wings nearly perpendicular to the rock walls on either side. The world became a tunnel of darkness, with only the faint glimmer of the river below to guide them. The first fighter came in fast, a Messerschmitt Bf-109, its engine howling, machine guns already firing. Tracer rounds streaked past the bomber's tail, missing by feet. Morrison returned fire, his turret hammering out rounds, but the Messerschmitt was too fast, too maneuverable. He's coming around for another pass. The second fighter appeared, another 109, this one diving straight down the pass, head-on toward S-sugar. A game of chicken at 300 miles per hour combined closing speed. The German pilot opened fire at 800 yards. Cannon shells exploded against the bomber's nose, spiderwebbing the perspex around Richardson. Jesus Christ! The bomb aimer curled into a ball as metal shredded the air around him. Hartley held his course. Steady! Steady! The 109 grew larger in the windscreen, its guns flashing, its pilot visible now, young, determined, probably as terrified as they were. 400 yards. 300. 200. The German broke first, pulling up hard, his belly flashing past S-sugar's canopy so close Hartley could see the panel lines. The slipstream from the fighter's passage rocked the Lancaster violently. We're hit! Fitz yelled. Port outer engine, oil pressure dropping. Temperature rising. Black smoke poured from the number 2 engine. Hartley felt the asymmetric thrust immediately, the bomber trying to yaw left, fighting him, wanting to spiral into the rocks. Feather it. Shut it down before it catches fire. Fitz's hands flew over the controls. The propeller blades aligned with the airflow, the engine died. Now they were flying on 3 engines, heavy with fuel and a wounded passenger, threading a mountain pass with 2 German fighters hunting them. The first 109 came back, this time from behind and below, climbing into the pass. Morrison tracked him with the rear guns, waiting, then fired. Tracer rounds converged on the fighter. Hits. Morrison saw metal fly off the 109's wing. But not enough. The German kept coming. He fired. Cannon shells tore into S-sugar's tail section, punching through the aluminum skin like paper. Morrison felt the impacts shudder through his turret. The smell of cordite and hydraulic fluid filled his mask. Tail damage, he reported. Rudder controls feel mushy. Can you still turn? Hartley demanded. Barely. Then we keep flying. The pass ahead was narrowing. The river canyon dropped away, leaving only vertical rock walls. The Lancaster's wingspan was 102 feet. The gap ahead looked like maybe 150 feet. Maybe. "Skipper, we're not going to fit," Collins pleaded. "We fit." Hartley banked the bomber slightly right, then left, then straightened out. The rock walls flashed past, one on each wingtip, close enough to touch. The wounded engine still smoked, leaving a black trail behind them. The fighters circled above, unable to follow into the narrow confines. Then they saw it, the end of the pass. Open sky. But between them and freedom, a railway bridge spanned the canyon. Steel and stone, maybe 60 feet high, crossing directly in their path. "Bridge ahead," Richardson screamed. "I see it. We're too high. We're going to hit it." Hartley did the only thing possible. He pushed the yoke forward. Sugar Dove, her nose pointing straight down into the canyon, engines roaring, altimeter unwinding. The bridge rushed toward them. They were going to hit. They were going to die. At the last possible second, Hartley pulled back. The Lancaster's belly cleared the bridge deck by 3 feet. They heard the grinding scrape of metal on stone, felt the impact shudder through the airframe. Then they were through, bursting out of the pass into the open valley beyond. "We made it," Webb breathed. "Jesus Christ, we actually made it." But they weren't safe. The valley opened onto a broader expanse, and directly ahead, lit by moonlight, was an airfield. A Luftwaffe base. Sugar had emerged from the pass directly over enemy territory, and every anti-aircraft gun in the installation opened fire simultaneously. The sky erupted in flak. Orange bursts surrounded them, above, below, to every side. Shrapnel tore through the bomber's skin, punching holes, severing lines, destroying equipment. The No. 3 engine took a direct hit, not just damaged, but destroyed, its cowling blown clean off, fire erupting from the exposed cylinder banks. No. 3's on fire. Fitz was already reaching for the extinguisher controls. Fuel shut off, activating fire suppression. The flames didn't die. They grew, spreading along the wing, consuming the fuel-soaked metal. "It's not going out." Fitz's voice cracked. "The fire's between the fuel tanks and the fuselage. If it reaches the main tank, we'll blow up," Hartley finished grimly. "How long?" 2 minutes. Maybe 3 if we're lucky. 2 engines left. Fire consuming the wing. German fighters still circling above. And they were still 200 miles from the English Channel. The agent's voice came weakly over the intercom, patched through by Richardson. "Leave me. Lighten the load. You might make it." "Nobody's leaving," Hartley snapped. "We came here for you and those documents. We're taking both home. The documents are what matters. You all matter. Now shut up and let us fly." Collins gave a new heading. "If we go northwest, we hit the coast near Antwerp. That's German-held, but there's less flak coverage than farther north." "Do it." Sugar turned onto the new heading, trailing smoke and fire, flying on 2 engines, her airframe riddled with holes. The fighter attacks had stopped. Either they'd lost them in the darkness or the Germans assumed the bomber was finished anyway. Let it crawl home to die. But Lancasters didn't die easy. "How's our passenger?" Hartley asked. Richardson checked the makeshift medical station. "Unconscious but breathing. The documents are secure in the waterproof case, wrapped in his jacket. If we ditch, they'll float. We're not ditching." "Skipper, realistically." "We're not ditching." The fire on the wing was spreading. Fitz had exhausted every trick, every procedure. The only thing left was to fly faster, to outrun the flames. But with 2 engines, they were barely maintaining 160 knots. The fire was winning. 1 minute, Fitz said quietly. "Maybe less." If that fire reaches the fuel tank, we have about 3 seconds before the wing separates." "Then we have 1 minute," Hartley replied. "Palmer, Morrison, be ready to bail out on my command. Richardson, Webb, prepare to evacuate the passenger and the documents first." "What about you and Fitz?" Collins asked. "We fly until we can't." The coastline appeared ahead, lights of occupied Holland, searchlights sweeping the sky, flak positions tracking them. The Germans knew a wounded bomber when they saw one. They were waiting. 30 seconds, Fitz counted down. 20. 15. The fire reached something critical. A fuel line, maybe, or hydraulic fluid. The flames surged, a brilliant orange wall consuming the entire wing route. Heat flooded the cockpit. The smell of burning metal and rubber choked them. "She's going," Fitz yelled. "The wing's going too." Hartley saw it coming. The structural failure. The catastrophic breakup. 1 more minute and Sugar would tear herself apart in midair. "Dive." He pushed the yoke forward hard. "Emergency descent." "Hold on." The Lancaster's nose dropped. They plunged toward the earth, the wind screaming past the fuselage, speed building, 180 knots, 200, 220. The fire flattened against the wing, blown backward by the 250-knot slipstream. The flames died. Not extinguished, but suppressed. "It's working." Fitz stared in disbelief. "The dive's starving the fire." "How long can we maintain this?" "Until we hit the ground." They were at 2,000 feet. Then 1,500. Then 1,000. The Dutch coastline rushed up at them, dark and deadly. Hartley eased back on the yoke, pulling out of the dive, feeling the fire surge again, then pushed forward once more, keeping the speed high enough to suppress the flames but not so fast they'd rip the wings off. The channel was ahead. Dark water, cold and final. If they went down there, the documents would be lost. The agent would drown. Everything would be for nothing. "Come on, Sugar," Hartley whispered. "Just a little farther." The bomber crossed the coast at 300 feet, trailing smoke and sparks, her fire-blackened wing barely holding together. Behind them, the German flak fell silent. They were over the water now, beyond reach. But the English coast was still 80 miles away, and the fire was coming back. The channel stretched endlessly below them, black and cold under the moonless sky. Sugar limped across it on 2 engines, her burning wing leaving a comet trail of sparks and smoke. In the cockpit, Hartley's arms ached from fighting the controls. The damaged rudder, the asymmetric thrust, the constant need to keep the nose down enough to suppress the fire, but not so low they'd hit the waves. "Fuel status?" he asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. Fitz scanned his gauges. "Port wing tanks are feeding." "Starboard tanks," he paused. "Reading empty. The flak must have punctured them. We're running on maybe 30 minutes of fuel. Maybe less. 30 minutes. The English coast was 25 minutes away if they maintained current speed. But current speed meant 200 knots in a damaged bomber with fire licking at her wing root and the constant risk of structural failure. Every second felt like flying on borrowed time. "How's our passenger?" Hartley called back. Richardson had stayed with the wounded agent throughout the nightmare run. "Still unconscious, but his pulse is steady. He's tough." The documents are secured in 3 separate places. Insurance against catastrophic failure. "Let me see them." "Skipper." "The documents. I want to see what we're dying for." Richardson carefully brought the waterproof case forward, opened it in the dim red light of the cockpit. Inside, perhaps 30 pages of German text, technical diagrams, mathematical formulas. At the top of the first page, stamped in red, Geheim, streng vertraulich. Secret, strictly confidential. And below that, drawings. Beautiful, deadly drawings. A fighter aircraft unlike anything in the Allied arsenal. Swept wings, sleek fuselage, and two massive engines underneath. Not propellers. Jet engines. The Messerschmitt Me 262. 540 miles per hour, Collins read over Hartley's shoulder. That's nearly 200 miles per hour faster than a Spitfire. And look at this, they're planning to build them by the hundreds. Operational deployment by December. 6 weeks away. 6 weeks until a technological leap that could extend the war by years. Unless these documents made it back. Unless the RAF and the Americans could prepare, could adapt, could find a way to counter this threat. That's what we're carrying, Hartley said quietly. That's why we can't fail. Webb's voice crackled over the intercom, picking up British coastal radar. They've got us on scope. Asking for identification. Tell them Operation Rubicon. Tell them we're coming in hot and we need emergency landing at the nearest field. Roger. Webb switched frequencies. His face went pale. Skipper, they're saying RAF Manston is socked in with fog. Visibility near zero. They're recommending we divert to. We don't have fuel to divert. Manston or the Channel. Those are our options. The coastline appeared ahead, white cliffs barely visible through the darkness. England. Home. So close they could taste it. But S-Sugar was dying. The fire on the starboard wing had crept forward again, suppression or no suppression. Fitz had exhausted every trick. The flames were feeding on something now, some pocket of fuel or hydraulic fluid they couldn't shut off. The wing was going to fail. It was just a question of when. 5 minutes to Manston, Collins announced. If we make it that long. Morrison called from the rear turret. Skipper, I can see the wing from back here. There's a crack forming at the root. Maybe 18 inches long. It's growing. How long? 2 minutes. 3 at most. Then physics wins. Hartley keyed the radio himself. Manston Tower, this is Sugar. Emergency landing. Immediate. We are critically damaged with fire and structural failure imminent. Roll all equipment. We're coming in dead stick if we have to. The reply was calm, professional. Roger. Sugar. Runway 36 is your best bet. Wind is light, straight down the runway. We're lighting the approach path now. Damn the blackout regulations. Just get here. Copy. Hartley scanned ahead. There, faint lights appearing through the fog, a string of dim bulbs marking the runway. It looked impossibly far away. Gear down. The landing gear dropped, at least on the port side. The starboard gear indicator stayed dark. Right gear's not locking, Fitz reported. The fire must have damaged the hydraulics. We land on one gear, we cartwheel. Then we lower it manually. There's no time. Make time. Richardson and Webb scrambled back to the manual gear extension system, a crank mechanism buried in the fuselage. They heaved on it, fighting the damaged hydraulics, sweat pouring down their faces despite the cold. 15 seconds to touchdown, Collins counted. 10. Gear locked. Webb shouted. Both down. The crack in the wing root was 18 inches long now. Then 24. Then 3 feet. The wing was peeling away from the fuselage like paper, held by fewer and fewer structural members. Hartley lined up on the runway. Through the fog he could see fire trucks, ambulances, crews running with equipment. They knew this wasn't going to be pretty. S-Sugar dropped toward the runway, nose high, tail low, fire streaming from her starboard wing. 50 feet. 30 feet. 20. The wing separated. It happened in an instant. The entire starboard wing, from root to tip, tore free. S-Sugar lurched violently right, the sudden asymmetry trying to flip the bomber. Hartley stood on the left rudder pedal, fighting with every ounce of strength, Fitz pulling on his yoke too, both of them screaming defiance at the physics trying to kill them. The main wheels hit the runway hard. The impact collapsed the right gear. The fire had weakened it beyond tolerance. The bomber's right side slammed down, metal screeching on concrete, sparks exploding. They were sliding now, spinning, out of control. Brace! 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 S-Sugar spun off the runway into the grass, her remaining engines tearing free, her tail breaking off, her fuselage crumpling like paper. The world became noise and violence and terror. Then, finally, silence. Hartley opened his eyes. He was hanging in his harness, the bomber on her side, sparks and smoke everywhere. His head rang. His shoulder felt wrong. But he was alive. "Sound off," he croaked. "Fitz here. Alive. Collins. I'm okay. Richardson. Got the documents. Got the passenger. We're both alive back here. Webb reporting. Banged up but mobile. Palmer. Bit of blood but nothing serious." Silence. Then, "Morrison here. Took a hit during the landing, but I'm walking. Mostly." 7 voices. 7 men. Against all odds, they'd survived. "Get out," Hartley ordered. "Fire crews are coming, but this thing could blow any second. Move. Move." They scrambled through the wreckage, pulling the unconscious agent with them, clutching the waterproof case with the documents. Fire crews swarmed the crash site, dousing flames, cutting through metal. Ambulances screeched to a halt. Medics rushed forward. Hartley stood in the grass, watching S-Sugar burn. She'd carried them through hell and brought them home. Now she was paying the price. Group Captain Morrison appeared out of the fog, his face grim. "The documents?" Richardson held up the case. "Intact, sir. Every page." Morrison took it, held it like it was made of diamonds. "Maybe it was. You boys just changed the war." He looked at S-Sugar's funeral pyre. "You paid a hell of a price for it." "The price of freedom," Hartley said quietly. "That's what we do." 3 weeks later, Hartley stood in a briefing room at RAF Waddington. Different room, same cigarette smoke, same young men who knew the odds. But this time, the group captain had different news. "Gentlemen, thanks to intelligence gathered by one of our crews, we now know the exact specifications and deployment schedule for Germany's jet fighter program. We know their production facilities, their testing grounds, their operational timeline." He paused. "Yesterday, 50 Lancasters hit their manufacturing plant at Regensburg. Complete destruction. The Me-262 program has been set back 6 months, maybe more." A cheer erupted. Morrison banged the table. Collins grinned. The group captain raised his hand for silence. "That's 6 months we'll use to prepare our own countermeasures. 6 months to save thousands of lives. 6 months gained because 7 men flew into Germany, landed in a field, retrieved a wounded agent and his documents, and brought them home through fire and hell." He looked directly at Hartley. "The agent survived, by the way. Recovering in hospital. He wanted me to tell you, the secret you carried that night will shorten this war. You did more than your duty. You did the impossible." After the briefing, Hartley walked out to the hardstands. A new Lancaster sat where S-Sugar had once lived, S-Sugar 2, freshly painted, engines gleaming. His crew was already aboard, running checks, preparing for the next mission. Because there was always another mission. Another night. Another dance with death over occupied Europe. But tonight, walking toward his new bomber under the cold English stars, Hartley allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Somewhere in London, intelligence officers were poring over those documents, planning, calculating, preparing. Somewhere in America, engineers were designing countermeasures. Somewhere in Germany, Hitler's jet program was in ruins. And it all started with a Lancaster that landed with a secret that could, and did, help end the war. Final reflection. Operation Rubicon remained classified for 30 years. When the files were finally declassified in 1975, historians discovered that the intelligence gathered that night in October 1943 fundamentally altered the Allied air strategy. The delay imposed on the Me-262 program meant the jets entered service too late and in too few numbers to affect the war's outcome. Flight Lieutenant James Hartley was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. His crew received various commendations. None of them talked about that night. Not for years, not until the veil of secrecy lifted. The wounded agent, whose name remains classified even today, recovered and returned to intelligence work. His report noted simply, 7 men risked everything for a case full of papers. In doing so, they may have saved tens of thousands of lives. S. Sugar was scrapped after the crash. But her number, S. Sugar, lived on, passed down to the next Lancaster, then the next, a legacy of courage that flew through 37 more missions before war's end. In 1988, the BBC tracked down the surviving members of Hartley's crew for a documentary. Collins said it best, "We were just doing our jobs. Flying the kite, bringing her home. That's all any of us ever did." But history knows better. Some missions were just flights. Some missions were survival. And some missions, like Operation Rubicon, were the difference between victory and defeat. The secret S. Sugar carried home that night helped end the greatest war in human history. And it all started with 7 men, 1 Lancaster, and the courage to fly into hell for a case full of papers.